Now, on the 7th day, they said that God rested, but actually I think he got a bit bored and just developed something called Lotus, a company so talented in engineering that they could punch so far above their weight. Delicious cars like the Elise and the Exige taking on the might of Porsche and certainly winning in various Car of the Year championships. Amazing, considering that a lot of these cars were genuinely built in a shed with a leaky roof. Today, Lotus is a different company, a new parent company, a bit more money, and that means a new attitude. Lotus certainly has an electrified future. We've seen that with the latest models that they've launched, but something of a swan song to their combustion era was this, the Lotus Emira, equipped with a 3.5 litre supercharged V6. There is nothing like a supercharged engine, and it's the same 3.5 litre we're familiar with from Lotuses gone by, so that's going to be one of the most bulletproof elements of this vehicle. It's linked to this really quite nice and slick 6-speed manual transmission. It's maybe not quite up there with the 911's tightness in its throw, but it's still certainly enjoyable to have 3 pedals and that engine behind you. It produces 400 brake horsepower in this, guys, and 430 newton meters of torque. That means 0 to 62 miles per hour takes just 4.3 seconds, and it'll go on to a top speed of 180 miles per hour. While high performance is certainly no stranger to Lotus, what is this interior, which is plush and has this high perceived quality, nice materials, intricate design. All of a sudden, things like sun visors aren't optional. Given that this first edition car comes in at about £86,000, you can't have things like your sun visors being an option anymore. So it has a bit more of a grown-up attitude, and that's something that's certainly felt on these lumpy, bumpy roads. 2 specifications for suspension and chassis here. This one is the slightly softer Touring, and it might be actually the one to go for, unless you're really taking your vehicle on track regularly. Slightly softer dampers have applied here, and of course you've got your selectable drive modes, and I'm just tooling around in Tour at the moment, and I have to say it's a perfectly refined and pleasant vehicle that has the perception that you could do some miles in it. Turn things up to sport though. Some valves open up in the exhaust, drop 2 cogs. Whoa! Do you know, I love electric cars. I really do. I really do. But there is nothing quite like a well-tuned, well-developed, high-performance combustion engine. That sound to an engineer is wasteful. That sound to a petrol head is an orchestra of horses. It's absolutely glorious and utterly intoxicating. But we've spoken about Lotus's new suit, its new clothes, its new toys in here. Stuff like a large touchscreen infotainment system is certainly alien to the likes of an Exige. Digital driver's display. What isn't quite so alien is the way this car drives. It feels alive in your hands. Sure, it's not quite as sharp as something like the Exige used to be, but then it's had to do a little bit of growing up in order to justify its price point and broaden its appeal. But for the keen driver, its change of direction is utterly magnetic. It's so communicative in that regard. The brake pedal maybe could do with a little bit more bite to it. Don't get me wrong, those stoppers really get on there, and as you feel the weight transfer through the car and that communication come through the chassis just how you remember it used to, it's an utterly joyous thing to drive quickly and an absolute weapon on our twisty roads. Matched with that really lovely power delivery that really picks up at about 3,500 RPMs, that supercharger winds into your left ear and you can see all of the linkages working behind you in the rear view mirror. You feel like you're in something mechanical. Like I said, it's not Exige levels of kind of incognito with the driver. There is a slight detachment because this is much more of a GT car. It's kind of what needed to happen really for more people to buy a Lotus if we're totally honest with ourselves. You know, despite its shiny new suit, this thing still has that Lotus DNA, that tactility, that feeling like you're plugged into the car and you really are the organic part of the machine. The seating position is spot on. I love that I can look out the mirror, I see those rear haunches, I feel like I'm plumbed right into the middle of what's going on. And yet, put it into top gear, switch it back down into touring, and you have a car that's much more usable than a Lotus ever has been in the past. I've seen this car criticised elsewhere for maybe being a little bit softer than what we expect from a Lotus. But then what's the criticism people levelled at Lotus before? It was forgiven for its fantastic handling, but it's maybe not the car you wanted to drive every single day of the week. This Emira is. This Emira is.